The clink of expensive crystal and the hum of polite laughter filled the air as Lily moved carefully between the guests. She balanced a heavy tray of champagne flutes, her black uniform blending into the shadows of the grand mansion. At 24, she had mastered the art of being invisible. Rich people preferred their servers that way, present when needed, gone when not. Tonight's party was at the Henderson estate, a sprawling home that could fit Lily's entire apartment building in just its east wing. Mr. Henderson was celebrating something about stocks or mergers. Lily hadn't really caught the details when her boss at the catering company gave her the assignment. What mattered was the extra pay for working the late shift. "Another glass, sir?" she asked, stopping beside an older gentleman in a tailored suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. He nodded without looking at her, continuing his conversation about yacht maintenance as if she were nothing more than a floating tray. Lily was used to it. 3 years of waitressing had taught her that the wealthy saw service workers as furniture, useful but not worth acknowledging. She wound her way through the crowded living room, replenishing drinks and collecting empty glasses. Her feet ached in the mandatory black heels, but she kept a pleasant expression fixed on her face. 6 more hours, then she could kick off these shoes and collapse into bed before her morning shift at the diner. As Lily entered the main hall, she paused. In the corner sat a magnificent grand piano, its polished ebony surface gleaming under the crystal chandeliers. The lid was propped open, revealing the intricate inner workings like the rib cage of some beautiful creature. Her fingers twitched at her side. "It's a Steinway Model D," a voice said beside her. "Nearly $200,000. Lily turned to find one of the kitchen staff, Miguel, holding an empty serving platter. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "You play?" Miguel asked. Lily hesitated. "I used to." Before she could say more, a sharp voice cut through their conversation. "Well, if it isn't the girl who spilled wine on my mother's rug last month." Lily turned to see a young woman approaching, champagne glass dangling from manicured fingers. She recognized her instantly, Diane Henderson, the host's daughter. Tall and sleek in a designer dress that probably cost more than Lily's car, Diane had a way of looking at people as if assessing their market value and finding them lacking. "I believe you're thinking of someone else," Lily said politely. "This is my first time working at your home." Diane waved a dismissive hand. "You all look the same in those uniforms." She turned to the 2 friends flanking her sides like fashionable bodyguards. "Daddy insisted on having live music, but the pianist canceled last minute. Something about food poisoning." Her eyes glinted with malice as she glanced back at Lily. "Probably ate at one of those dreadful food trucks." Lily took a small step backward, hoping to retreat before Diane decided to make her evening's entertainment out of belittling the staff. Unfortunately, the movement caught Diane's attention. "Oh, were you admiring our piano?" Diane's tone was syrupy sweet, dripping with condescension. "It's amusing when the help tries to appear cultured." Miguel shot Lily a warning look before slipping away toward the kitchen. "Smart move." Lily wished she could follow. "I was just doing my job, ma'am," Lily said, gesturing to her tray. "Would you or your friends care for more champagne?" One of Diane's friends, a redhead with a too-tight dress, giggled and held out her glass. As Lily leaned forward to pour, Diane shifted slightly, her elbow bumping Lily's arm. Champagne sloshed over the rim of the glass, spattering the redhead's dress. "Oh," the redhead shrieked, jumping back. "Look what she did." Lily's heart sank as she quickly set down her tray and reached for the napkins tucked into her apron pocket. "I'm so sorry. Let me help." "Don't touch me," the redhead snapped, snatching the napkins from Lily's hand. Diane's mouth curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "How clumsy. Daddy will be so disappointed to hear about this. What's your name again?" "Lily," she answered, feeling a cold dread creep up her spine. She couldn't afford to lose this job. The rent was due next week, and her brother's college textbooks had emptied what little savings she had. "Well, Lily," Diane purred, "perhaps you should stick to serving rather than ogling expensive instruments you'll never be able to afford." A small crowd had gathered now, attracted by the commotion. Lily felt her cheeks burn with humiliation as the wealthy onlookers watched her with a mixture of amusement and disdain. "Is there a problem here?" A deep voice cut through the tension. Mr. Henderson appeared, his imposing figure commanding immediate attention. "Daddy," Diane said, her voice instantly transforming into that of a doting daughter. This waitress was just telling us how much she admires your piano. Right after she spilled champagne on Rebecca's dress. Mr. Henderson's eyes, the same icy blue as his daughter's, fixed on Lily. Unlike Diane, there was no cruelty in his gaze, just the cool assessment of a businessman calculating costs and benefits. I apologize for the accident, sir, Lily said, straightening her shoulders despite the knot of anxiety in her stomach. I'll pay for any cleaning costs. The redhead, Rebecca, scoffed. This is a Versace. You can't afford the dry cleaning, let alone replacement. Mr. Henderson waved away the concern. Accidents happen. The company will cover any costs. He turned back to Lily with unexpected interest. You play piano? Before Lily could answer, Diane interjected. Oh, she was practically drooling over it, Daddy. I think she fancies herself quite the musician. The look of calculation in Mr. Henderson's eyes intensified. Our pianist canceled tonight. The party feels empty without music. Lily felt a surge of panic. Sir, She'd be delighted to play something for us, wouldn't you, Lily? Diane's voice was honey-sweet poison. After all, we're paying your company quite handsomely for tonight's service. The implication was clear. Refuse and her job would be in jeopardy. Lily glanced toward the kitchen, hoping to catch sight of her supervisor, but there was no rescue in sight. The crowd around them had grown, guests watching the drama unfold with the detached interest of people accustomed to being entertained. I haven't played in a long time, Lily said, trying to keep her voice steady. Oh, come now, Mr. Henderson said, warming to the idea. Just a piece or two to liven up the party. Consider it making up for the spilled champagne. Diane's smile widened, triumph gleaming in her eyes. She had successfully transformed Lily from invisible servant to evening spectacle, and everyone knew it. I'm sure she's just being modest, Daddy, Diane said, linking her arm through her father's. Aren't you, Lily? Trapped, Lily nodded stiffly. As Mr. Henderson guided her toward the piano, she felt dozens of eyes following her journey across the polished marble floor. Some guests looked curious, others amused, a few even sympathetic. But none intervened. The piano bench felt cold beneath her as she sat down. Lily stared at the gleaming keys, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. She hadn't touched a piano in 3 years. Not since the night her parents' car slid off the icy bridge, leaving her responsible for her younger brother and a mountain of medical bills. Well? Diane's voice carried across the suddenly quiet room. We're waiting. Lily's hands hovered over the keys, trembling slightly. She could feel sweat beating at her temples despite the room's perfect climate control. Play something simple, she told herself. Just get through it and escape back to the kitchen. But as her fingers made contact with the cool ivory, a strange calm washed over her. The familiar weight of the keys beneath her fingertips awakened something she had buried deep. A piece of herself she thought was gone forever. Behind her, someone coughed impatiently. Another person whispered something that made several others chuckle. They were expecting her to fail, to embarrass herself for their entertainment. She could almost feel Diane's smug satisfaction radiating across the room. Lily closed her eyes and took a deep breath, and then she began to play. The first notes filled the room like drops of water into a still pond. Lily's fingers moved tentatively at first, testing the waters with a simple melody. The piano responded to her touch with a richness of sound she had almost forgotten. 3 years since she'd last played, yet her body remembered what her mind had tried to forget. She began with something simple, a Chopin prelude she had learned as a child. The familiar pattern of notes was comforting, like finding an old friend waiting exactly where you'd left them. Behind her, she could sense the shift in the room. The murmurs quieted, the mocking chuckles faded. Surprise rippled through the gathering crowd as the clumsy waitress produced music that floated above their heads and wrapped around their hearts. Lily kept her eyes closed, afraid that if she looked at the audience, the spell would break. The prelude was short, barely 2 minutes, and as she played the final notes, she braced herself for laughter or dismissive comments. Instead, there was silence. Then scattered applause. That was lovely, Mr. Henderson said, his voice closer than she expected. But rather basic, wouldn't you say? Perhaps something with more complexity? Lily opened her eyes. Mr. Henderson stood beside the piano, studying her with newfound interest. Behind him, Diane's triumphant smile had faltered, replaced by a look of confusion. "I'm a bit out of practice," Lily said quietly. "Nonsense," replied Mr. Henderson. "Your technique is excellent. You've had formal training." It wasn't a question, but Lily nodded anyway. "Play something else," he insisted. Something challenging. More guests had gathered now. Waiters paused in their duties, trays held forgotten at their sides. Even the kitchen staff peered through the doorway, Miguel giving her an encouraging thumbs up. Lily's mind raced. She could play another simple piece and escape back to anonymity. That would be the safe choice. But something about Diane's narrowed eyes and thinning lips sparked a forgotten fire inside her. "All right," she said, straightening her back and repositioning her hands. This time she chose Rachmaninoff. The opening chords of his Piano Concerto No. 2 thundered through the mansion, startling several guests who nearly spilled their drinks. The piece was notoriously difficult, a mountain of technical challenges that had once taken Lily months to master. Her fingers stretched across octaves, leaping between complex chord structures with a precision that belied her years away from the instrument. The music built in intensity, the melody soaring above the intricate harmonies like a bird riding a storm. Lily lost herself in the performance. The party disappeared. The mansion faded away. There was only the music, the conversation between her soul and the piano. She didn't need the sheet music. Every note was etched into her muscle memory, into the very core of who she was. As she played, memories flooded back. Her first piano lesson at age 5, the competitions she'd won throughout her teens, the scholarship letter from the prestigious music conservatory, the phone call that had changed everything. She poured it all into the music, the joy, the loss, the dreams deferred but never abandoned. Her body swayed with the rhythm, her face reflecting every emotional peak and valley of the piece. This wasn't just playing. This was communion. When she finally struck the last triumphant chord, the sound resonated through the room like a thunderclap. For a heartbeat, no one moved, no one breathed. Then the room erupted. Applause crashed over her like a wave. Guests who minutes earlier had barely acknowledged her existence were now on their feet, expressions of amazement replacing their usual masks of polite indifference. Lily's hands trembled as she lowered them to her lap. She felt exposed, as if she had just undressed in front of strangers. The music had stripped away her carefully, constructed anonymity and revealed the person she had hidden away 3 years. "Ago extraordinary," a voice said over the continuing applause. Lily turned to see an older woman approaching the piano. Unlike most of the guests, she wore a simple black dress with a single strand of pearls. Her silver hair was pulled back in an elegant knot, and she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who didn't need to prove anything to anyone. "You've studied with someone exceptional," the woman continued. "That technique isn't self-taught," Lily swallowed hard. "Professor Chen at the National Conservatory." The woman's eyebrows rose slightly. "Thomas Chen doesn't take many students. You know him?" A smile touched the corners of the woman's mouth. "My dear, I'm Eleanor Wilson. Thomas and I were at Juilliard together." Lily's breath caught in her throat. Eleanor Wilson, the renowned pianist and director of the City Symphony. Her recordings of Rachmaninoff were legendary. I know who you are, Ms. Wilson," Lily stammered. "I have all your albums." Eleanor tilted her head, studying Lily with piercing eyes. "What's your name?" "Lily Chen." Then, seeing Eleanor's look of surprise, she quickly added, "No relation to Professor Chen, just a coincidence." "Well, Lily Chen of no relation," Eleanor said, her voice warm with amusement. "You play like someone who belongs on a concert stage, not serving champagne." Before Lily could respond, Mr. Henderson inserted himself into the conversation, placing a proprietary hand on Eleanor's shoulder. "Eleanor, I had no idea my little soiree would provide such entertainment. Had I known one of my caterers was a musical prodigy, I would have saved the money on the pianist who canceled." His joke drew polite laughter from the nearby guests, but Eleanor's expression remained serious. "This young woman is no mere entertainment, Richard," she said firmly. "What she just played would challenge pianists with decades more experience." Mr. Henderson nodded, adopting a more respectful tone. Of course. I only meant, Dad!" Diane's voice cut through the conversation as she pushed her way to the piano. Her face was flushed, her composure visibly slipping. "Aren't we supposed to be discussing your foundation's new project?" "Everyone's getting distracted. In a moment." "Sweetheart," Mr. Henderson replied absently, his attention still fixed on Lily. Ms. Chen was just about to tell us where she studied. All eyes turned expectantly to Lily. This was the moment she had dreaded, the questions that would unravel the careful separation she maintained between her past and present. I had a scholarship to the National Conservatory, she said quietly. I completed 2 years and then, Eleanor prompted gently. Lily hesitated, acutely aware of the dozens of strangers hanging on her every word. These people didn't know her. They didn't deserve her story. Yet something about Eleanor's kind eyes made Lily continue. There was an accident. My parents, she paused, steadying her voice. They passed away. I have a younger brother. He was 16 at the time. I became his guardian, and there were medical bills, the mortgage. I had to leave school. A hush fell over the crowd. Even Diane seemed momentarily sobered by the simple tragedy of Lily's words. That was 3 years ago, Lily continued. I haven't touched a piano since. Until tonight. Eleanor reached out and covered Lily's hand with her own. Music like yours doesn't disappear. It waits. From the edge of the crowd, Miguel appeared with a glass of water which he handed to Lily with an encouraging smile. She took it gratefully, suddenly aware of how dry her throat had become. Well, Mr. Henderson said, breaking the emotional silence. This calls for a celebration. Richard Henderson doesn't let talent go unrecognized. He turned to address the party at large, raising his voice. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been privileged to witness something extraordinary tonight. I propose a toast to Ms. Lily Chen and her remarkable gift. Glasses were raised throughout the room. Lily felt a wave of dizziness wash over her as the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. She had played again. Not in private, not in some dimly lit bar, but on a concert-grade Steinway before a crowd that included one of her musical heroes. I should get back to work, she said, starting to rise from the bench. Nonsense, Eleanor said firmly. Richard, surely you can spare this young lady from serving duties for the remainder of the evening? Mr. Henderson nodded enthusiastically. Of course, of course. In fact, I insist you play for us again, Ms. Chen. My guests would be delighted. Lily glanced toward the kitchen where her supervisor stood watching with an unreadable expression. Would this cost her the job? Or create an awkward situation with the other servers? As if reading her thoughts, Miguel gave her another thumbs up and mouthed, We've got this. In the far corner, Lily noticed Diane whispering furiously to her friends, shooting glares in her direction. The plan to humiliate the waitress had backfired spectacularly. Eleanor leaned closer, her voice low enough that only Lily could hear. Play again, my dear. Not for them. For yourself. Lily took a deep breath and turned back to the keys. For herself. Yes. It had been too long. Her fingers hovered for a moment, then descended gently onto the keys. This time she chose Debussy's Clair de Lune, its delicate opening notes floating through the room like moonlight on water. And as she played, Lily felt something inside her begin to heal. The final notes of Clair de Lune lingered in the air like perfume. Lily's hands remained poised above the keys, reluctant to break the spell she had woven. The room stayed silent for several heartbeats, the wealthy guests seemingly transported somewhere far beyond the Henderson mansion. When the applause finally came, it was different from before. Not the startled appreciation of witnessing an unexpected talent, but the deep, reverent acknowledgement of having experienced something genuinely moving. Several guests dabbed at their eyes. One older gentleman in the back simply nodded, his face solemn with respect. Eleanor Wilson was the first to speak. Beautiful, she said softly. You play Debussy as if you've lived inside his mind. Lily felt a blush creep across her cheeks. He was my mother's favorite composer. A woman of excellent taste, Eleanor replied. Then more quietly, I'd like to speak with you privately before the evening ends. Before Lily could respond, she found herself surrounded by guests eager to introduce themselves. Business cards appeared from pockets and clutch purses. Names and titles blurred together as hands were extended toward her. Bradford Wells, Wells Investment Group, Charlotte Dupree. I chair the Arts Council, James Thornton. I simply must have you play at my daughter's wedding. Overwhelmed. Lily looked to Eleanor for help, but the older woman had stepped aside, watching with a small smile as Lily navigated her sudden popularity. From across the room, Diane Henderson observed the scene with a tight-lipped expression, her friends attempting to console her. She's probably some one-hit wonder, Lily overheard one of them say. I bet she only knows those 3 pieces. Still, another replied. You have to admit she plays beautifully. Diane tossed her hair. Who cares? She's still just a waitress. The word stung, but not as much as Lily might have expected. 3 years ago, she would have been crushed by such dismissal. Now, with the music still humming through her veins and Eleanor Wilson's praise ringing in her ears, Diane's pettiness seemed small and distant. Mr. Henderson appeared at Lily's elbow, expertly dispersing the crowd around her. Let's give Ms. Chen some air, shall we? There will be plenty of time to speak with her later. He guided Lily to a quieter corner of the room, where a server, one of Lily's colleagues, immediately offered her a glass of water and a small plate of hors d'oeuvres. You must be hungry, Mr. Henderson said. I imagine playing like that works up an appetite. Lily realized she was, in fact, starving. The emotional and physical exertion had depleted her energy. She accepted the plate gratefully. I owe you an apology, Ms. Chen, Mr. Henderson continued, his tone businesslike but sincere. My daughter's behavior was unacceptable. Lily nearly choked on her water. That's really not necessary, sir. Oh, but it is, he insisted. The Henderson name stands for something in this city. We don't treat people the way Diane treated you tonight. He glanced across the room to where Diane stood with her friends, still shooting occasional glares in Lily's direction. She's young, he continued, more to himself than to Lily. Too accustomed to getting her way. Her mother and I, well, perhaps we've been too indulgent. Uncomfortable with this sudden glimpse into the Henderson family dynamics, Lily searched for something diplomatic to say. We all have bad days, Mr. Henderson laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his serious face. Very gracious of you, Miss Chen. Now tell me about your brother. The question caught Lily off guard. My brother? Yes, you mentioned he was 16 when your parents passed. That would make him 19 now, correct? Is he in college? Lily nodded slowly, uncertain where this was heading. He's studying engineering at State. He has a partial scholarship, but I help with the rest. On a waitress's salary? That can't be easy. We manage, Lily said, her pride rising. I work 2 jobs, sometimes 3 during summer break when he can help with extra shifts at the grocery store. Mr. Henderson nodded, a calculating look in his eyes that reminded Lily of his initial assessment when Diane had first confronted her. Admirable. And your music? You had a scholarship at the conservatory? Full ride, Lily said, unable to keep a note of pride from her voice. I was studying under Professor Chen, no relation, like I said. One of the best in the country, Mr. Henderson agreed. And you simply stopped? When your parents died? The blunt question would have seemed cruel coming from anyone else, but Mr. Henderson's tone held genuine curiosity. I didn't have a choice, Lily explained. My brother needed me. Our parents' insurance barely covered the funeral expenses and the remaining medical bills. The mortgage was underwater after the housing crash. And a music degree, she trailed off with a small shrug. Not the most practical career path in a crisis, Mr. Henderson finished for her. Exactly, Eleanor approached, having evidently decided Lily had spent enough time with their host. Richard, you're monopolizing our discovery of the evening, Mr. Henderson smiled. Just getting acquainted, Eleanor. Miss Chen was telling me about her brother. Yes. The engineer, Eleanor said, surprising Lily. She must have been listening more carefully than Lily realized during her earlier explanation. State University, you said? Eleanor continued. That's where my nephew teaches. Robotics department, Lily. Felt a strange sense of worlds colliding. Her everyday life of work and family responsibilities suddenly intersecting with this rarefied world of wealth and influence. My brother would be impressed, she said. He's focusing on electrical engineering, but he's fascinated by robotics. A practical young man, Mr. Henderson observed, unlike his sister who has the soul of an artist. Before Lily could respond, there was a commotion near the entrance to the hall. A man in his early 30s with stylishly disheveled hair and an expensive but casually worn suit had arrived, drawing attention and greetings from several guests. Ah, Mr. Henderson said, his voice cooling noticeably. The prodigal son arrives. Eleanor touched Lily's arm. That's Anthony Henderson, Richard's son and Diane's older brother. The newcomer made his way through the crowd, accepting drinks and handshakes as he moved. He had his father's height and his sister's confident bearing, but there was something different about him, a restlessness in his movements, an alertness in his eyes that suggested he was actually seeing the people around him, not just looking past them as so many of the other guests did. When he reached their small group, he greeted Eleanor with genuine warmth, kissing her cheek. "Ms. Wilson, still putting up with my father's boring parties. I see. Someone needs to bring culture to these gatherings. Anthony," she replied with affection. Anthony turned to his father with a respectful but cooler nod. "Dad, you missed dinner," Mr. Henderson said. "Again." Board meeting ran long. "You know how it is." Anthony's gaze shifted to Lily, his eyebrows rising slightly in question. "This," Eleanor said with obvious pleasure, "is Lily Chen, the pianist everyone is talking about." Anthony looked confused. "I thought Markowitz canceled?" "He did," his father confirmed. "Ms. Chen works for the catering company." Anthony's confusion deepened. "The catering company has a concert pianist on staff?" "Not exactly," Eleanor explained and quickly summarized the events that had led to Lily's performance. As she listened to the story retold from an outsider's perspective, Lily felt a surreal disconnect. Was this really happening? Just hours ago she had been an invisible server, and now she was the center of attention at one of the city's most exclusive gatherings. Anthony's expression darkened when Eleanor described Diane's attempt to humiliate Lily. He glanced across the room toward his sister, who quickly looked away. "That sounds like Diane," he said grimly. Then to Lily, "I apologize for my sister's behavior, though I imagine your playing was punishment enough for her." Despite herself, Lily smiled. "I wasn't trying to punish anyone. I just played?" "And magnificently," Eleanor added. She turned to Anthony with sudden inspiration. "You still have connections at River City Records, don't you?" Anthony nodded cautiously. "I'm on their board. Why?" "Because this young woman needs to be recorded. Her interpretation of Rachmaninoff is the freshest I've heard in decades." Lily felt her breath catch. "Ms. Wilson, I appreciate that, but I'm very out of practice. I haven't played in 3 years and—" "Which makes what we heard tonight all the more remarkable," Eleanor interrupted. "Imagine what you could do with proper preparation and a concert-ready instrument." Anthony studied Lily with new interest. "You're that good?" "She's better than good," Eleanor insisted. "She's authentic. No manufactured emotion. No technical showing off for its own sake. She plays from someplace real." Mr. Henderson cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should let Ms. Chen decide if she wants to pursue this. She has responsibilities, after all." For the first time since she'd begun playing, Lily felt a rush of panic. This was happening too fast. Her simple life was suddenly spiraling into something complicated and unknown. "I should check in with my supervisor," she said, seizing on the excuse. "I'm still on the clock technically." "Of course," Anthony said, sensing her discomfort. "But take this." He pulled a business card from his pocket and handed it to her. "If you're interested in exploring options, call me. No pressure." Lily took the card, noticing it bore no mention of River City Records. Instead, it simply read, "Anthony Henderson, Bridges Foundation," with a phone number. "Thank you," she said, tucking it into her apron pocket. "Excuse me." As she walked away, she heard Eleanor say to Anthony, "Don't let this one slip away. She's special." Lily hurried toward the kitchen, desperate for a moment to collect her thoughts. She pushed through the swinging door and found herself face to face with her supervisor and several of her fellow servers, all of whom broke into spontaneous applause at the sight of her. Miguel wrapped her in a quick hug. That was amazing. Everyone in the kitchen was listening. Her supervisor, a normally stern woman named Rita, actually smiled. "When you didn't come back, I went to check. Mr. Henderson himself told me you were reassigned to entertainment for the evening." She winked. "At triple your usual rate." Lily blinked in surprise. "Really?" "And," Rita continued, lowering her voice, "he asked for your contact information. Said something about his foundation." The swinging door opened behind them and Anthony Henderson stepped into the kitchen. The staff immediately straightened, conversation dying. "Sorry to intrude," he said, looking only at Lily. "But there's someone else who wants to meet you. Someone I think you should talk to." Lily hesitated, glancing at Rita, who nodded encouragingly. "Go," her supervisor said. "We've got everything covered here." Taking a deep breath, Lily followed Anthony back into the party, wondering what other surprises the night might hold. Anthony led Lily through the crowded main hall, past curious onlookers who whispered as they passed. Lily felt strangely exposed in her waitress uniform, now that everyone knew she wasn't just another invisible server. Some guests nodded respectfully at her. Others seemed determined to pretend that nothing unusual had happened. "Who wants to meet me?" Lily asked, hurrying to keep pace with Anthony's long strides. He glanced back with a small smile. "Someone who could change everything for you, if that's what you want." They reached a quieter section of the mansion, a book-lined study where a small group had gathered around a distinguished-looking man in his 60s. He sat in a leather armchair, listening intently to a younger man who spoke with animated gestures. Eleanor Wilson stood nearby, and she beckoned them over when she spotted Anthony and Lily. "Thomas," she said to the seated man, "this is the young woman I was telling you about." Lily froze as the man turned to look at her. Professor Thomas Chen, her former mentor at the conservatory, regarded her with surprised recognition. "Lily?" he said, rising from his chair. "Lily Chen?" The small group fell silent, watching the unexpected reunion. "Hello, Professor," Lily managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's been a while." Professor Chen stepped forward, studying her face as if checking whether she was real. 3 years, 2 months, and approximately 14 days, but who's counting? A pang of guilt shot through Lily. She had disappeared from the conservatory without a proper goodbye to the man who had championed her talent since she was 15. "I meant to call," she began. "Professor," Chen waved away her explanation. "Eleanor told me what happened with your parents. I understand why you left. What I don't understand is why you never came back, even to visit." The question hung in the air between them. Lily was acutely aware of the onlookers, but Professor Chen's gaze demanded an honest answer. "I was ashamed," she admitted quietly. "You invested so much in me and I just quit." "You didn't quit," Professor Chen corrected her firmly. "You faced a family tragedy and made the responsible choice. That's not quitting. That's life." Something tight in Lily's chest loosened at his words. She had carried the weight of disappointing him for so long that his understanding felt almost too good to be true. "I haven't played in 3 years," she said. "Until tonight." Professor Chen's eyebrows rose. "And yet Eleanor tells me you performed Rachmaninoff's second as if you'd been practicing daily. That says something, doesn't it?" Before Lily could respond, the animated young man who had been speaking earlier stepped forward. "Excuse me, but is this the waitress-turned-pianist everyone's talking about?" He extended his hand. "David Park, Classical Pulse magazine. I'd love to get your story," Anthony smoothly intercepted. "I think Ms. Chen has had enough excitement for one evening. Perhaps another time." Of course," David said, not at all deterred. "But may I just ask one question? Is it true you were forced to play as some kind of punishment?" Lily felt her face grow warm. "It wasn't exactly, and that's enough, David," Professor Chen cut in. "This is not a press conference." The journalist backed away, but not before handing Lily his business card. "Call me when you're ready to talk. This is the kind of human interest story our readers love." As David rejoined the larger party, Professor Chen sighed. "The vultures are already circling. Eleanor, perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more private." Eleanor nodded. "Richard has offered his library. Anthony, would you show the way?" The small group moved deeper into the mansion, away from the main party. Lily felt as if she were floating through a dream. Just hours ago, she had been setting up appetizer trays in the kitchen. Now she was walking through the private quarters of one of the city's wealthiest homes with musical royalty. The library was a 2-story room with walls of books, leather furniture, and a smaller, upright piano in one corner. Mr. Henderson was already there, pouring drinks at a sideboard. "There you are," he said. "I thought we could use some privacy." He gestured to the seating area where Diane sat. Looking uncomfortable, Lily stopped short at the sight of her tormentor, but Anthony placed a gentle hand on her back. "Diane has something she'd like to say," he explained quietly. Mr. Henderson handed glasses to Eleanor and Professor Chen, then took a seat beside his daughter. "Go ahead, Diane." The young woman stared at her hands for a moment before raising her eyes to meet Lily's. "I want to apologize for my behavior earlier. It was childish and cruel, and I'm sorry." The words sounded rehearsed but not entirely insincere. Lily suspected Mr. Henderson had insisted on the apology, but Diane's expression suggested she might actually mean it. "Thank you," Lily said simply. "Apology accepted." Diane nodded, a flicker of relief crossing her face. You play beautifully. I took lessons for 12 years and never sounded half as good. The compliment, offered without prompting, surprised Lily more than the apology had. 12 years is a long time, she replied, searching for common ground. You must have some talent yourself. Diane gave a small, self-deprecating laugh. Enough to recognize the real thing when I hear it. She stood up. Anyway, I'll leave you all to talk business. I'm sure Daddy has big plans. With a quick glance at her father, Diane left the library, closing the heavy doors behind her. Please sit, Mr. Henderson said, gesturing to the vacant seats. I believe we have matters to discuss. Lily perched on the edge of an armchair, feeling out of place in her serving uniform among these powerful people in their elegant clothes. First things first, Professor Chen said, leaning forward. Lily, do you want to play again? Professionally, I mean. The direct question caught her off guard. I haven't really thought about it. It's been so long and my life is different now. Your life could be different again, Eleanor pointed out. The question is whether you want it to be. Lily thought about her brother, about their tiny apartment, about the constant juggling of bills and work schedules. Then she thought about how it had felt to lose herself in the music again, to connect with that essential part of herself she had locked away. I do miss it, she admitted, more than I realized until tonight. Anthony, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. There are ways to explore this without upending your entire life immediately. Mr. Henderson nodded. That's where my foundation comes in. The Bridges Foundation, which Anthony runs, provides scholarships and stipends to promising artists who face financial barriers. It was created after my mother died, Anthony explained. She was a concert violinist before she married my father. She always felt she'd had to choose between her art and her family. Lily glanced at Mr. Henderson, seeing him in a new light. I didn't know. Few people do, he said with a small shrug. It's not something we publicize widely. Professor Chen cleared his throat. The conservatory would welcome you back, Lily. You were one of our most promising students. We could arrange a special program that accommodates your responsibilities to your brother. Lily's mind whirled with possibilities she hadn't allowed herself to consider for years. But I'd still need to work. Our bills don't stop just because I'm playing piano again. That's where we come in, Anthony said. The foundation could provide a stipend that replaces your income while you study and practice. Your brother's tuition and expenses would be covered as well. Lily stared at him. Why would you do that? You don't even know me. But I do, Professor Chen interjected. And so does Eleanor. We're vouching for your talent, Mr. Henderson nodded. And frankly, it's exactly what the foundation was established to do. Find exceptional talent that might otherwise be lost to practical necessities. There's one condition, Anthony added. You'd need to perform occasionally at foundation events. Let our donors see their money at work. Lily laughed shakily. That's not a condition. That's a dream, Eleanor smiled. I told you she was the real thing. Mr. Henderson stood up and walked to a desk in the corner. He returned with a folder, which he handed to Lily. This is preliminary paperwork for a Bridges Foundation grant. Take it home. Discuss it with your brother. Think about what you want. Lily took the folder, her hands trembling slightly. This is all happening so fast. Life often works that way, Professor Chen said. Opportunity doesn't always knock gently or wait for convenient timing. A soft knock at the library door interrupted them. Miguel peered in, looking apologetic. Sorry to disturb you, he said to Mr. Henderson, then turned to Lily. Rita asked me to let you know we're packing up. The party's winding down. Lily nodded, suddenly remembering she was still technically at work. I should help with cleanup. Nonsense, Mr. Henderson said. You're relieved of those duties tonight. Anthony can drive you home when you're ready. Miguel gave Lily a thumbs up and a grin before disappearing back through the door. Professor Chen stood. I should go as well. Eleanor promised me a ride back to the city. He turned to Lily. My studio at the conservatory. Tomorrow at noon. Just to talk. No pressure. Lily nodded, unable to find words as her former teacher squeezed her shoulder affectionately before leaving with Eleanor. Left alone with the Henderson men, Lily clutched the folder to her chest like a shield. It's a lot to take in, Anthony said gently. No one expects you to decide tonight. Mr. Henderson checked his watch. I should return to my guests. Anthony, make sure Ms. Chen gets home safely. He paused at the door. And Lily? Sometimes life gives us second chances. They're rare. Don't be afraid to take this one. After he left, Anthony moved to the small piano in the corner. May I? Lily nodded, and he sat down, playing a simple but lovely melody she didn't recognize. Did you compose that? She asked. He nodded. Music was my first love too. Not at your level, but I understand what it means to play. Why did you stop? Anthony's hand stilled on the keys. I didn't, not completely. I just found a different path, helping others pursue their art rather than focusing on my own. Lily studied him with new interest. And that fulfills you? Most days, he said with a small smile. But sometimes I wonder what might have been. He stood up from the piano. That's why I don't want you to have to wonder. Ready to go home? As they left the library, Lily clutched the folder containing her possible future, feeling both terrified and exhilarated by the choices suddenly before her. Yes, she said finally. I'm ready. 3 months later, Lily stood backstage at the Riverside Concert Hall, her fingers moving silently through the passages of Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, the same piece that had changed her life on that fateful night at the Henderson Mansion was now the centerpiece of her debut recital. 5 minutes. Ms. Chen, a stagehand whispered as he passed. Lily nodded, trying to calm the butterflies in her stomach. The last 12 weeks had been a whirlwind of change. After a long talk with her brother Alex, who had practically pushed her out the door to meet Professor Chen the day after the party, Lily had accepted the Bridges Foundation grant. With Anthony Henderson's help, they had structured the support to cover not just her return to the conservatory, but also her living expenses and her brother's education. You're not throwing away your engineering degree, she had insisted to Alex when he suggested taking time off to work and support her instead. We both get to follow our dreams. That's the deal. Now, as she peeked through the curtain at the filling concert hall, Lily could hardly believe how much had changed. Her part-time schedule at the conservatory allowed her to dive back into music, while still having time to help Alex with his coursework. Professor Chen had created a specialized program to help her rebuild her skills and repertoire, and Eleanor Wilson had introduced her to a circle of musicians and patrons who welcomed her with unexpected warmth. There you are, Anthony said, appearing at her side with a small box in his hand. Nervous? Terrified, Lily admitted. What if I freeze up? What if I forget the middle section? What if you play beautifully, just like you've done every day in practice? Anthony interrupted gently. What if this is just the first of many successful performances? Lily smiled despite her nerves. Over the past months, Anthony had become a steady presence in her life, first as her foundation liaison, then as a friend, and lately, perhaps something more. Unlike the wealthy men she had served at countless parties, he wore his privilege lightly and seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts and experiences. I got you something, he said, holding out the box, a little tradition in my family before performances. Lily opened it to find a simple silver bracelet with a small piano charm. It's beautiful, she whispered. My mother wore something similar for her concerts, Anthony explained as he helped fasten it around her wrist. She always said it reminded her that music is about connection, between the artist, the instrument, and the audience. I'll try to do it justice, Lily said, touched by the gesture. The backstage door opened, and Alex burst in, slightly out of breath in his new suit. At 19, he still had the gangly energy of a teenager, despite his serious studies. Am I late? He asked, straightening his tie. The traffic was insane. You're right on time, Lily assured him, giving him a quick hug. How was your robotics presentation? Alex grinned. Professor Wilson loved it. He thinks we should apply for that engineering competition next semester. He looked around the backstage area with wide eyes. This is so cool, Lily. I can't believe my sister is playing here. His enthusiasm was contagious, and Lily felt her anxiety easing. This was why she had accepted the foundation's offer, not just for herself, but for both of them to have the chance to pursue what they loved. 2 minutes, the stagehand called. Alex squeezed her hand. I'll be in the front row. You're going to be amazing. With another quick hug, he hurried back to take his seat. I should go too, Anthony said. Break a leg. He hesitated, then leaned in and kissed her cheek. Play from your heart, Lily. That's where the magic lives. As he left, Lily touched her cheek, a small smile playing on her lips. That was new. The stage manager approached. "Ready, Miss Chen?"
Taking a deep breath, Lily nodded.
"Ready?" Walking onto the stage felt like stepping into a dream. The lights were brighter than she had expected, making it difficult to see individual faces in the audience. But as her eyes adjusted, she could make out Alex in the front row. Beside Anthony and Mr. Henderson, Professor Chen and Eleanor sat nearby, along with several of her new friends from the conservatory. And there, slipping into a seat just as Lily reached the piano, was Diane Henderson. Their paths had crossed several times in the past months, as Lily attended foundation events and began to move in the same social circles as the Hendersons. Their interactions had been cordial but distant, the memory of that first night always hovering between them. Diane caught Lily's eye and gave a small, uncertain wave. Lily nodded in acknowledgement, before turning her attention to the gleaming concert grand before her. This piano was a far cry from the upright she had practiced on in their apartment all those years ago. Even the Steinway at the Henderson mansion couldn't compare to the perfectly maintained instrument waiting for her fingers now. Lily adjusted the bench, took a centering breath, and began to play. The first notes of Bach flowed from her fingers, clean and precise. She had chosen to open with his prelude in C major, simple on the surface but requiring perfect control. As she played the familiar piece, her nervousness faded. The audience disappeared. There was only the music, speaking through her as it had always done. From Bach, she moved to Chopin, then Debussy, each piece chosen to showcase a different aspect of her abilities. The program had been carefully crafted with Professor Chen, building toward the Rachmaninoff that would close the first half. When the time came for the concerto, Lily paused, gathering her strength. This was the piece that had revealed her true self that night at the party. Now, after months of dedicated practice, she would play it not as someone pressed into unexpected performance, but as an artist making a conscious choice. The opening chords resonated through the hall. Lily felt the power of the music flowing through her, her fingers finding the keys with confidence born of countless hours of work. The technical challenges that had once seemed insurmountable now felt like old friends, guiding her through the emotional landscape of the piece. As she played, images flashed through her mind. Her parents at her first recital beaming with pride, Alex doing homework at the kitchen table while she practiced, Professor Chen challenging her to dig deeper into the music, Miguel and the other servers applauding her in the kitchen, Eleanor Wilson's knowing smile, Anthony's quiet encouragement. Each memory, each person, had contributed to this moment. The path hadn't been straight or easy, but somehow it had led her exactly where she needed to be. The final chords of the Rachmaninoff thundered through the concert hall. For a heartbeat, silence hung in the air, that magical moment between the end of the music and the beginning of the audience's response. Then came the applause. It started gradually, building into a wave that washed over Lily as she rose from the bench. The audience was on their feet, their faces blurred through the happy tears that filled her eyes. She bowed deeply, gratitude overwhelming her. As she straightened, she saw Alex cheering wildly in the front row, Professor Chen nodding with unmistakable pride, and Anthony watching her with something that looked very much like love. Backstage during intermission, Lily was surrounded by well-wishers. Eleanor embraced her warmly, whispering, "You've arrived, my dear." Professor Chen simply squeezed her hand, his eyes saying everything words couldn't. Alex bounded up, practically bursting with excitement. "That was incredible. Everyone around me was crying during the Rachmaninoff." Anthony hung back, letting her family and mentors have their moment. When they finally had a quiet second alone, he asked, "How does it feel?" Lily thought for a moment. "Like coming home. Like finding a piece of myself I'd lost." She smiled. "But also like the beginning of something new." A soft knock on the door interrupted them. To Lily's surprise, Diane stood in the doorway looking uncharacteristically hesitant. "I don't want to intrude," she said. "I just wanted to say..." That was beautiful. The sincerity in her voice was unmistakable. Whatever bratty impulse had led her to humiliate a waitress 3 months ago seemed to have faded, replaced by something approaching respect. "Thank you for